Welcome to Propaganda Loves You, the show that asks and answers the question, what was Nazi Germany's work shy, and what does it have in common with DC's unhoused population? I'm Cody, your host for this episode, joined by Arthur and Cheyenne.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Welcome back to Propaganda Loves You this week. So, so many things going on this week that we could have picked to talk through. I think today what we want to kind of talk about, there's two big things that we really want to hit on. That's, Trump's takeover of DC, federalization of DC, bringing in all of the different federal authorities that are coming into DC and the recent raids and roundups that they're doing against the unhomed population in DC. So that's something that we're going to talk about because, we had previously talked about in earlier episodes, different executive orders that Trump had signed specifically to end, ending crime and disorder on America's streets was what it was. So yeah, we'll kind of talk about how those two things work together, and then also, some historical context as where this has taken place before. And then the other big topic that we kind of wanted to hit on today was the recent articles that have come out related to the Smithsonian and how they are now have to basically align a lot of their exhibits and programming with the Trump administration over the next year, specifically for the America 250 celebrations, right? They want it to align with pro-American ideals and the actual administration. So we'll talk a bit about that as well and some historical context there. But before we get into those two big topics, we don't have Joe this week. Joe is out for a while on a retreat. So Arthur, Cheyenne, and I are going to take you through this today. So Arthur, anything that you want to hit up before we get into our main topics for today?
I think we're going to hit it all, these topics. Ending crime on the streets. I thought it was interesting. The executive order was 14321. Like it was a countdown,
I didn't even notice that.
Totally.
Yeah, it's just, that whole topic is just going to be, anyway, we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
On my end, I guess there's a couple things I wanted to mention just because, these will probably be something that we'll track more in depth in a future episode, but couple other things that have happened since our last episode. One, I just want to really briefly, there was a couple articles that came out I think it was Reuters did this, and then there are a couple other, like New York Times, I think, in an article on this. But recently there was a hack of the U.S. federal court system. So they think that there's been a breach and it's compromised sensitive and different sealed records related to U.S. federal courts. So the belief is that this is Russia, or it's believed that Russia did this attack based off some cyber investigators as to what occurred there. Trump was asked about this, and his response was essentially like, well, what do you think's going to happen? It's Russia, right? They just do that. And this is like less than 6 months after they basically said Russia wasn't a cyber threat to us and we should stand down cyber operations against Russia. So, just the way he kind of responded to it was almost normalizing it, just being like, it's whatever, no big deal. Like Russia can hack, like we're going to hack. So I thought that was something that was interesting. And then, just on Friday this week, so it was at August 15th, Trump and Putin met in Alaska for this big, summit that was supposed to be what the Ukraine, they were going to figure it out and get a ceasefire. And apparently that didn't go very well. I don't know if you guys were tracking the stuff.
Yeah, it immediately shifted from like ceasefire to like, it's a broad peace talk,
Yeah. Yeah, like they had like this whole plan. Did you see that someone in the administration that had access to the official agenda and everything that was supposed to take place had printed it off at a hotel and left it on the printer?
Yeah.
So everyone saw like this huge agenda that was supposed to be, and they were supposed to have this lunch, and none of that happened. Putin basically came in and like did his thing, gave his demands, and left and got his picture with the president. Like it's just, yeah.
Yeah, and then the Kremlin released a bunch of Trump-loving Putin propaganda together.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge win for them, right? To kind of like come to the U.S. and then have, Trump basically putting on he had like a B-2 bomber fly over with F-35 jets, like as they're walking down this red carpet, like to whatever meeting spot. Like looks great, just take a international criminal dictator from another country and welcome into the US like that. Like,
And
yeah.
speaking of walking on the red carpet, did you see the video of Trump where he's just like zigzagging the whole way down? He can't even like walk in a straight line.
No, I think I saw a comment on that or something. People were worried about his health. They'll say that all the time because the dude can't, I don't know, I don't feel like he can't walk in a straight line for years at this point, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the interesting things there. I think like from just I guess if we had to tie that into any like a propaganda angle or whatnot, for that one, it's, like we mentioned, huge win for the Kremlin and for Russia to just be seen on that stage, like kind of getting that deference from the United States presidents, right? I was bending the knee a little bit there, and then so that's good for them. And then just the whole normalization of Russian hacking of the U.S. federal systems and acting like it's not a big deal, right? Like, so all in all, I think propaganda-wise, it's been a great week for Russia. Just, some little things there.
Yeah. Some good propaganda that I've loved is, how last week we talked about, like the potential of gerrymandering and, maybe California redistricting. And it turns out this week, Trump missed the deadline that Gavin Newsom set. And so, they are going to move forward with redistricting California. And I've just loved Gavin Newsom's tweets. They are in like all caps. They are totally trolling Trump and they're getting somewhere. They're very funny.
Yeah.
And I love it. I think Gavin Newsom should do this full time.
Oh yeah, 100%. The thing I thought that was the greatest about this was the highlight of a Fox News host saying like, this is unprofessional. Like, how could you have the governor of a state tweeting things like this? It's very childish. And not seeing like the or obviously they see the hypocrisy, right? There's no way that they can't, but just like it's, oh man, just ridiculous. I agree though. You should continue on with that. Did you catch his press conference too, where he was pretty animated? I think it's been clear for a while that Newsom's got ambitions to probably run for president at some point here, but I mean, hey, I got to give him credit if he's actually standing up and saying like, hey, you guys, like the Democratic Party needs to wake up to what's occurring right now. Like it's not, business as normal. We have to fight back however we can. Like, so yeah, I'll give him credit for sure. And then,
Yeah. And on that, I saw too, like, kind of talking about the Smithsonian, I saw Stephen Miller tweeted something about the Smithsonian about, it's great or whatever. And then Gavin Newsom literally retweeted the exact same quote, but like alternated capital and non-capital letters, the entire thing. So it just looks like crazy person thought.
it's like the SpongeBob meme or whatever. He's basically doing that back to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how long he keeps that up. If it's just like continue until he gets some sort of reaction out of Trump or whatnot. Who knows? But yeah, I'm all for it. Speaking of good news, I don't remember if I told you guys this yet or not, but my favorite breakfast place here in town. Did I ever tell you what they did with the poster that I gave them? So yeah, so I went, this was months ago that I went in there and I like asked it, they've got like the community board. So I asked like, hey, can I throw one of these up on the community board? And they're like, yeah, it's really more for like specific events that are taking place. Like if there's like a date, right? Like, oh, we're going to do a party on what
I've
date
seen
or
that
something
board.
like that.
It's nothing to do with events.
Right.
Come on.
Right. But they were like, but yeah, like you can throw it up for a week or something like that. And so then I talked to the owner probably like 2 days later or something like that, because I was going to see if I could just advertise, like put it somewhere like bigger poster. And so he's like, yeah, let me think about it. And then I came back like a week later and they had moved the little one from, I think I had it like way up, like in the top corner, right next to the door. So like people could actually like see it and scan it on the way in and out. So it's like, oh, that's super nice. So
That's really nice.
yeah. So that was cool. Yeah. So favorite breakfast place has a poster up and they did that. I'll give them a shout out if they want. I think they listened to it because after I put it up, at least some people there, I think do. So I'll give
It
them a
is the
shout out if
best
they want.
breakfast. It's the best.
Yeah.
They should
their
do like
sandwiches.
a PLY sandwich or something,
I wonder what that would even be made of, but yeah, we can think
Pastrami, lettuce,
yeah,
yams.
yams. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
Tired of the chaos and division in our nation's capital? The Capital Restoration Project is here to deliver our promise of a safer, more unified city for everyone.
They said they were going to clean up the streets, make things better for all of us. And in some ways, it looks better downtown, but you don't see many people around anymore.
We listen to your concerns about public safety and the need for a more orderly environment. Our comprehensive revitalization plan ensures that those experiencing housing insecurity are now provided enhanced transitional support at our newly established Capital Advancement Centers, where they will receive the resources needed to thrive.
That's right. We're creating a city where life can look simple and aesthetic. Our dedicated public safety initiative is building trust and ensuring that our streets are welcoming for all law-abiding citizens.
Yeah, the centers are out of sight, I guess, and the new public safety units are definitely present. Things feel more controlled.
The Capital Restoration Project thinks about what is best for everyone as a whole, not on a case-by-case basis. Beautification through unification.
Join us in celebrating a restored capital. Support the Capital Restoration Project today.
One of the main topics that we want to talk about today, been in the news for the last week. I don't know when this actually started. I think it was Friday, but basically when Trump federalized the DC police, or tried to federalize the DC police, and brought in FBI agents, National Guard, I think it was like DEA, ATF, basically like all the different federal law enforcement agencies, and started bringing these people into DC in order to do a crime surge, is what he's calling it, right? We mentioned this a little bit, I think, in the last episode that we talked about this, or maybe it was in the book club episode that's going to come out Thursday. But yeah, so basically did this surge and to have like all the police going through, and what that turned into, I think, as of Friday night, was they were planning on doing raids against the homeless encampments in DC, calling it kind of like a cleanup or something like that. And I don't know if you guys saw any of the social media videos or whatnot related to that, but I saw quite a few over the weekend of different people saying like, stay inside, don't be like out, don't be doing anything that could get you targeted. And then also I think the DC, not the federal, but like the DC district leadership and volunteers and stuff like that were going through on Friday trying to get most of the unhoused population into shelters before the raids took place. Like they were trying to get them off the streets as much as possible before that occurred. But anyway, the reason that, we want to talk about this specific thing is because a couple weeks ago, we talked about Executive Order 143021, like you mentioned, Arthur. It's ending crime and disorder on America's streets. And we kind of walked through that, the language of it, what it was saying. It was talking about doing a lot of involuntary commitment, like enabling civil commitment of people that were on the streets and putting them into institutions or possibly camps, right? Like, well, it said institutions or any other, I think, what was it? Alternative something. I can't remember the exact wording there. We could pull it up. We'll put it back in the notes for this. But, when we were talking about that, I think one of the concerns there was like, okay, like, what are these alternative locations that these people could be going, and who's making the decision on who is a threat to themselves or others? And I think we're seeing exactly what they meant with that executive order, with the actions that are taking place right now in DC. So it's rounding people that don't have a place to live, that really have no way of fighting back legally, right? Like they don't have lawyers, like anything that's going to go through that is like ACLU that's going to have to fight back for this. But what I kind of wanted to do was take a quick look at, historically, some other areas where similar things have taken place. So before I kind of go into like some historical parallels of this, anything from you guys, or any thoughts on, what's occurring right now, and like the EO coming out, and then now these sweeps going on through DC.
Yeah, it's just like, it's always phrased, I guess, as like urgency, right? And like crime emergency, and the language is always clean and beautiful. And I guess it reminded me a lot. I read a book called The Invisible Bridge about, Nixon and Reagan and their whole kind of like, I guess, political language and what they've tried that were similar things. And Nixon used like law and order in his like 68 campaign, and talked about how, Black communities were essentially the root of chaos, and street crime became like the coded word. And then Reagan in the 80s did it with like crack houses and war on drugs and welfare queens and all this. So it's always like framing this group of people who happen to not be white as the problem. And it seems like this executive order is like the direct heir of all of that. And it's taking like structural problems like housing and wages and then renaming it something else and then deploying the police and trying to make it so that he doesn't have to see it out on the street. Like it's just for him to not see this stuff. And to your point too, like it's really scary because I think we're in a place in the US where it's like, we're making like synonyms to concentration camps. And some of the things are really much a lot like that. And these people are the most in danger because they literally have like some of them don't have systems of support to check in on them and to like track them. And they're literally like they could disappear tomorrow and who's going to know? So it's very scary, especially for these people who are like houseless and they're addressing this systemic issue as whatever, an emergency that Trump's doing. And who's heading it? This whole, it's very scary.
Yeah, and like the way that they're going about this too, right? From trying to ensure that states that have money going towards housing first initiatives, like using punishment versus housing first initiatives, like specifically trying to say that housing first is not a valid approach to this.
And locally, we actually have this issue. It's a continuous issue, as I've talked about with like Lane County. The houseless rate here is much higher, like per capita, and Eugene hosts forever because Uncle Phil of Nike and what's his name? Phil,
I think
the
the
Nike
Nike
guy.
exec.
Phil Knight. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
We call him Uncle Phil around here because he literally pays for everything, which is like 1,000th of his net worth, and he actually doesn't really help out anybody. But he has like, this contract, whatever. They host the Olympic trials here and world championships, and Eugene is like home to all of this stuff. And it's a big tourism thing for Eugene. And before all of these events, Eugene Police sweep Jefferson Park, it happens to be where they all live or lived, and surrounding areas near like Hayward Field. And it's always framed as like, we're welcoming the world, Tracktown, USA. But it really, like, they fence off the parks. They displace everybody. They make the poverty invisible. And then when those events are over, they don't care to address the issue at all. And another thing is like how they address it is like they do the same kind of thing where it's like, oh yeah, we want them off the streets. We're going to build this shelter. They build a shelter that can fit 20 people. There's 5,000 that need it. And then they have very strict rules. Like you can't have animals with you. You can't have a history of this. It's actually a shelter that's 8 miles away from anything else. And it's just like ridiculous. Yeah. So locally, we suffer from this too.
Yeah. Yeah. And the point that you made about like its optics and stuff like that, that's actually a huge portion of what the Germans, like Nazi Germany, reason why they did something very similar. So like just going into kind of like some parallels that occurred in history, right? Like for both of the things that we're talking about today, the takeover of DC, the rounding up of unhomed people, and the Smithsonian, there's direct parallels to Nazi Germany here for both of these. So just looking at the DC takeover and what's occurring there, in 1933 in Germany, there's a thing, I'm going to mess up the German version of it first, but it's like Bettelrasen or something, which is essentially beggar raids is what it translates to. So this was like really early after Hitler, like within months of coming into power, they basically signed new preventative detention authorities, right? So the EO is a spiritual successor of the preventative detention laws that were put in place in Nazi Germany at the time, which enabled them to round up all of the unhomed people in Nazi Germany. And they actually used that, like the images of clean streets and no unhomed population or no beggars, what they call it, like anywhere, like as propaganda for, oh, this is working, right? This shows like a clean, pretty city, like, society is all taken care of, right? When really it was the same thing, just rounding people up and moving them to another location, right? And that, was the start of it, was those beggar raids in 1933 is what they called them. That kind of expanded in like between 1937, 1938. They basically took this category of asocials, which they looped a bunch of people into, which was essentially like the Roma, what colloquially, I think people would always say like gypsies, which I don't think is like a term you're supposed to say anymore. So the Roma, that was a part of it. And then, yeah, prostitutes, alcoholics, anyone that had mental illness, like we're all kind of lumped into this category of asocials, which they said had like a national security threat against like national community, basically threat to the social fabric of the Nazi Germany culture is essentially what they thought of these people as. And what that led to was in 1938, it was action, definitely going to mess this one up, but it's like Arbeitsreich, which I've got the actual article here, so let me read from this really quick. Okay. Arbeitsreich, which is basically work shy, is what they called it, work shy Reich, which ended up with around 10,000 people were arrested, considered to be antisocial elements, and were sent to concentration camps. Not specifically just the Jewish people that were rounded up for this purpose. So this is just anyone that they had deemed was, antisocial or part of this out group, right? And those early raids, the early raids in 1933, is what kind of laid the groundwork for two things. One, it was normalizing the state violence against that population first, right? So the more that happens, the more people become comfortable with it. And then it was also using the propaganda of like, oh, look, clean streets, clean, like no one's here, like this is working, our plan is working. I mean, it just turns into a propaganda opportunity, really, to try and say that, what they're doing is working and they're keeping dangerous people off the streets when really they were sending people to concentration camps and using them for forced labor. That's the parallel, I think, that we could draw for this. It's very similar to the 1933 raids that took place in Germany.
I kind of think like, when you were saying this, like the logic here of like clean street equals good and, disorder or whatever, in front of your eyes is like crime. I think like if you play that out to the extent like, wouldn't North Korea be the safest place on earth? They got to have the cleanest streets. Like there's, a brand new street and they're totally clean. So North Korea is what we're all aiming to be. And any sort of chaos in the street, is not good.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. Like in Trump's perfect world, I think he would have a totally clean street. There wouldn't be any cars. There wouldn't be any people. We'd all be gone.
Yeah.
So like, what's the goal there? It also led me to think too about like, I remember Giuliani as when he ran for mayor or was mayor, whatever, he did the whole broken window policing. And I remember that he enacted this in New York City, and really it was Giuliani. Like, I guess the idea with broken window policing is that if you see a broken window in a building, it signals neglect. And that invites further neglect, and soon the whole neighborhood's going to be in decay. And so the idea was to charge and to go after really small infractors. And so they targeted like stop and frisk on the subway. They targeted like panhandlers and graffiti people and all these people who are causing disorder. Right. And I guess it just did like the same thing where, it's like cleaning up the streets is the solution. And it just led to like a huge rise of charges against all of these people. I think it was like 500,000 or something within a year. Tight. And then I know Bloomberg did it in New York with stop and frisk and stuff too. But I guess, yeah, just this whole idea continues where you have these tyrants who think that going after disorder that they can visibly see is what they should do rather than address the issue systemically and give housing to people.
What I was thinking about as you were saying that is it was just like this equation of order with like the right thing. You're saying like, if we're saying like clean up the streets, or like, oh, we want the streets to be pretty and pristine and everything orderly. I guess what I'm thinking is like democracy in itself is not clean. It's not orderly. Like it's a lot of argumentation. There's a lot of opinions. And neither are people, right? We're not, like you said, we're not North Korea. We all march in the same line. Everything's absolutely spotless. It makes me think of Starship Troopers, right? How like everything is this idealistic, everything is perfectly clean and organized, but the entire society is controlled by the government, and like you're not a citizen unless you work for the government, like all these things. It's essentially the fascist utopia, right? That's the society they want to get to, like solve everything with force and, have complete control over everybody.
I had a thought, like, I feel
Yeah.
like the language being used, like what you're saying, like the citizens or whatever, like the tactic of othering or creating division or something, like it changes the narrative of like failing like the majority of the citizens. And the way to like get that group off of your hands is to like, they're the new term now is like they're criminals or whatever.
Mhm.
But like, are these people actually criminals? And is it up to the individual, like what group you're being put in? It's really not. It's like the person saying this is actually a criminal,
Yeah.
and the laws that are being made to criminalize these things are subject to change just to whatever benefits the person in power. If they say, hey, there's no more free speech, and we're all like, what the hell? We could all be criminals at that point. It has
Yep.
absolutely nothing to do with you, what place you've been put in. It's just what is the most convenient thing to best serve the general goal of the people in charge who are failing you and just only serving their own motives, you know?
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
And I'm like just thinking that like, yeah, that's why I think when we started talking about these executive orders too, and when Joe was talking about it, a lot of these executive orders are not going to stand up in court, but until they actually get challenged, like, yeah, it's a decree from the king, right? Like you cannot do X, and then it makes it illegal, and then it's what they use to prosecute or to persecute people. 100% agree.
Yeah, I struggle because I don't know if there's a term like, we talk about like recidivism as like the rate of when people, how there's like a revolving door around prison and they go back to prison and there's all these systemic issues that cause that. But like with houselessness, it's the same thing where there is a revolving door, and once people have housing, they stop the cycle of going through sweeps or jail or ER visits or whatever these things that these people are prone to due to the systemic issues. But it's like we're choosing to spend millions, and I'm sure the budget will get even higher to clear tents and, but it's like you could actually just invest in real homes, and we're pouring public money into erasing these people's built livelihoods and moving them all the time, which just creates not a stable life, and we're not creating solutions. And when you look at the math, it's like really short-sighted and unbelievable that we're like passively agreeing with our tax dollars. I don't know if that's a fair thing, but it's just unbelievable. This is where the tax dollars go. And Congress should be settling tax dollars, not Trump.
Right. Yeah. There's something about a constitution. I don't know.
Well, it's in his office.
Yeah.
He has like a highlighter and a Sharpie, and he's just like,
he's just crossing parts out and it's like writing it in. Yeah. Just some white out with the original. Yeah, what I was thinking there too was, we spent so much money now on Alligator Alcatraz, and we're spending $600 million of FEMA dollars to build camps, concentration camps, right, in other states. When we could be like, I don't know, retrofitting malls that are abandoned, right, for housing or something like that. Like there's other solutions, or, just buildings. I mean, I guess I'm just agreeing with you and just frustrated that we're not thinking about of other solutions that would be like housing first to actually solve problems, right? Like instead of, punishment being the way to solve problems. Like,
And it's not even like idealistic solutions that like they don't make sense in the real world. It's like there are so many solutions that make sense that happen in other places that show that they solve these problems and stuff that we absolutely know how to do and have the money to do, and they just don't want to do that.
yeah, which in my mind just solidifies like then why do it this way? Well, because you want to normalize state violence against people and you want to be able to use this for your propaganda campaigns, and you're planning to do this against more people. Like, I mean, I don't really know if there is another explanation that you could take from this other than that. I guess like the simplest one would just be like Trump doesn't like to look at homeless people. I feel like it's more nefarious than that, unfortunately. Yeah, I guess the last thing I wanted to mention here, just like the wording that was interesting to me from the 1938, that Action Arbeitsrecht, the work shy individuals. Just made me think about like all the rhetoric that we have in the US against anyone that's on Medicaid, like young people on Medicaid or on any kind of social welfare, right? Like this talk of like, oh, these able-bodied workers that just don't want to do it and want to sit in their parents' basement, right? Like they don't want to contribute to society and they don't want to work. How similar that concept is to like, oh, like these people in German society that are work shy and they won't be part of the national community. Therefore, we need to round them up and put them into camps, right? Like that logic. And again, it feels like there's a direct line from that logic in 1930s Germany to what is occurring right now. Maybe that's a little hyperbolic. I hope it is, but I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I mean, they basically want to criminalize poverty.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we've proven in so many conversations how poverty is linked to so many systemic issues. So it's like they're literally like, and how the laws of the US and the Constitution and everything, all these compromises that were made in all these book clubs we've talked about have kind of an overarching angle where these laws and the way that we find ourselves in society are written for the white, middle to upper class people, property owners. And here we are taking that end result and criminalizing the antithesis of that, which we chose.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Awesome. It's another ringing endorsement for capitalism, right? Like it's just, out of the park. I was thinking about Joe's comment. Well, actually, one thing on what you said there, Arthur, you said, white landowners being able to vote or something like that. It's, I just wanted to mention, I was listening to Behind the Bastards. They did 2 episodes on Pete Hegseth. I'd listen to that if you haven't, but it got me down the rabbit hole on Pete Hegseth a little bit. And like he's recently been posting, I think, Twitter videos of different, I think a church group or a pastor that he follows that basically is calling for the U.S. to return to household votings. So like you or like I would be the one to cast the vote for the Olbert house. Like it'd be one vote, right? So weird how that's a thing that people are pushing for. Who knew that would be something people would be trying to go back to?
I mean, like that is frightening. And another parallel of that is that they're trying to bring back like church endorsements for candidates too.
Really?
And so it's kind of the same thing,
man.
like where the family, the father is going to tell us, who to vote for and who to whatever.
Yep.
That would really simplify it for them, I think.
I mean, let's be real. That's been happening how many Oklahoma church services did we go to? Just thinking about those, like how you casually insert, those Democrats into that conversation.
My last thing is like, whenever I go on vacation, I'm always thinking, okay, this is like an intrusive thought. I go into a giant area, like a hotel, and I think, if this were like a revolution and this were like Versailles and the people were taking it over, how many people could you fit here? It's often a ton. That all leads to me saying, I think we should retrofit Mar-a-Lago and that should be where people live. I would bet that you could fit like 500,000 people on the grounds and they would all be comfortable.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's great because it's already got all of the, the kitchen facilities that you would need. It probably has like medical facilities, like you could revamp the spa and just turn that into like a medical treatment center for anyone that has addiction issues, right? Oh man, I like that idea a lot. If I'm ever president, that'll be one of my campaign slogans.
I think they'll do.
We're turning Mar-a-Lago into a unhoused transition resort, I guess is what we'll call it.
Are you tired of history that's been hijacked by competing agendas? Is your past feeling a little out of focus? At Heritage Vault, we believe in a more streamlined historical narrative.
Streamlined? But isn't history supposed to be an account of what actually happened in the past?
Precisely. History is about telling the right story. Our proprietary memory harmony algorithm ensures a seamless narrative by simply refocusing on key takeaways. We've recontextualized a few troublesome details to better fit in the broader American triumph.
Imagine a curriculum that just makes sense. Learn about our brave founders without dwelling on certain unfortunate inconsistencies. Celebrate the march of progress without the tiresome footnotes.
So it's a version of history that just skips the parts you don't like?
It's history optimized. Why carry the baggage of the past when you can walk the path of a patriot?
Subscribe to Heritage Vault today. Walk the path of the patriot.
Heritage Vault assumes no responsibility for discrepancies between our simplified narratives and independently verifiable historical records.
Jumping from that topic into our one other topic for this week that we wanted to hit on, we did mention this briefly. Well, actually, I don't even think we went into. So what happened was a couple weeks ago, I think there was some news articles out saying that the Trump impeachment exhibit had been taken down at the Smithsonian. And then there was a follow-up and it's like, oh no, it's going to come back. But when it came back, it was slightly modified from what it was before. It was still talking about Trump's impeachment, but I think it softened the wording around the election in 2020. It was talking about how previously, I think the wording was essentially talking about the Jan 6, the rioters in response to false accusations of the election being rigged, but it kind of removed that false accusations portion and softened the language around that to make it sound like 2020 could have been rigged, right? It doesn't come out and say that it was rigged, but implies. And then what started coming out after that was a couple different articles related to essentially the Trump administration assigning somebody that's going to be reviewing the Smithsonian. I think specifically there was a couple of the Smithsonian museums that they were looking at, like the African American History Museum, and that these would be essentially reviewing their exhibits and everything else that they've got in trying to align that to what the White House thinks that they should have. And so wanted to talk about this because, we've talked about in our fascism episodes, very early episodes, how governments will try to control the past and rewrite the past in order to control the future, right? If you control what people believe took place, then you can make any future action seem to be much more acceptable. Or if in this case, you basically whitewash all of the US's history to the point where the US has never done anything wrong. We've just always been this glorious country that's always been on the right side of history somehow, right? Then it makes it much harder for anyone that doesn't actually have the real history there to think of the US as maybe doing something wrong. If you grow up and you're like, oh, US is the best, we've never done anything incorrectly, then when you hear about terrible things, you're like, wait, that can't be right.
Yeah.
We do that?
I
Right?
thought that as a group of founding fathers and we formed this country, the land, I think it was given to us by God. There was nobody here.
Right.
And we're fighting
Yeah.
the monarchy that's oppressing us.
Exactly.
The surprising thing about this Smithsonian thing, I thought, was in this letter, they talk about how it has to align to Americanism, which okay, it can be subjective. But I literally thought of the video that you shared with us where there's the whole hot dog with the
Yeah.
ketchup. And I was like, what are these new things going to be?
Yeah, when we started the show, we really didn't know what the propaganda was going to look like coming out of this administration, but I wouldn't have guessed that it would basically just be AI versions of World War II propaganda and legit, just straight up, racist, Thomas Kincaid drawings, of the Great White Hope or whatever coming across the United States.
The Trump Gaza AI video with the golden statue and the Elon eating hummus, it just was a whole next level thing. The disbelief I had to get over that that was a real thing took 10 minutes. I was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah. That's how I feel every time I look at the DHS's Twitter account or the rapid response accounts that they have too. They're essentially just their propaganda channels. That's where they're pushing out all of these Uncle Sam propaganda posters, but it's join ICE and defend the homeland. And there was one that was Which Way American Man, which was a callback to, I think, a white supremacist novel from 1978, Which Way Western Man. So it's just, yeah, I mean, it's mask off, just white nationalism at this point. I don't even think they're trying to deny it. So, which, good, be honest, I guess. Anyway, so yeah, so the previous topic that we talked about, which was the rounding up of asocials or antisocials or whatever you want to call it in 1930s Germany, there was also a very similar parallel in Nazi Germany for what's occurring right now in the Smithsonian. I'm gonna not pronounce this correctly, but I think again, German here, Gleichschaltung, something like that, is what this is called, cultural Gleichschaltung, which is basically, yeah, like harmonizing state institutions with a single controlled narrative, right? That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to control the narrative of the culture and like building this out. In Germany, they actually had to write the Chamber of Culture, which essentially, this is obviously not exactly where we are yet, but it essentially had like all artists and press and everything had to join this central chamber of culture for Nazi Germany at the time, like mandatory. It was mandatory membership for anyone that was in that field. And they, in like 1937, uh, Germany actually they did like a degenerate art exhibition, which was basically all the art that they thought didn't align with where German heritage was supposed to be going and wasn't, part of national unity, like demonstrate all these like images and stuff, and basically got rid of them or compared them against what they thought was like the great German art of the time that they agreed with. And, this is at the same time that they were doing a lot of book burnings and museum purges to get rid of exhibits that didn't align with Nazi German ideology, right? And wasn't aligned to like the Chamber of Culture themselves and what they were doing. So, it's a direction that feels very similar to where we're headed right now. I mean, granted, this was a little bit more, or by the time this was taking place in Germany, it was a little bit more extreme in that they actually like had forced everybody into these memberships and whatnot. But still, right, what we're doing is we're censoring and we're aligning all of our history at our most cherished, institutions, from the Smithsonian to this one narrative that's being driven by the administration. So I wanted to make that quick comparison. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess it reminded me of the whole Kennedy Center, which they took over really early too, kind of like a cultural arm of the US, and it's deciding who's going to be on stage and who is not. And what happened was a lot of Kennedy Center people who were scheduled that the administration was excited for just ended up canceling. And I think that that's kind of what happens here with the Smithsonian. Like, it's not like, oh, like for me, I guess personally, and for people who are reading and aware of this news outside of, some bubble, it's like the Smithsonian just becomes not credible. And it just loses all trust with me, as does like, the Kennedy Center or whatever arm they're going to take over. It reminds me of like, I read, how like Texas is going to teach the inaccurate election results next year. It's just like they're cleaning the streets, they're cleaning the museums, they're, cleaning the education. They're just trying to form the next generation of voters who are going to put them in power forever.
Mhm.
And I think it's totally fair to compare it to the Gleichschaltung.
Gleichschaltung. Yeah, I mean the
Gleichschaltung.
Nazification
Yeah.
of Germany, right? Like that's what it is. It's the cultural Nazification. Like, so we are going through the cultural magification of America at the moment, driven by the federal government and certain state governments. Yeah, same thing for Oklahoma, right? Like get the Ten Commandments up in all the classrooms, right? Teaching the Bible, like, yeah, it's the same playbook. So I guess when you hear things like they're just doing what the Nazis did, this is what people are talking about. This is kind of the stuff. And these are just like two examples from the last week. This is not the only things that they've done that have been like directly in line. Like a lot of just the rhetoric in general, enemy from within, like scapegoating all of the immigrants and all of the trans people. Like that's something that actually probably not talked about very much, but trans people were one of the very early targets of the Nazi regime, right? Because they're easy to other and make a scapegoat out of. So yeah, using some similar tactics there. For
Not
sure.
giving people due process and building literal concentration camps and
Yeah.
sending people to literal concentration camps in countries where it's established that they are concentration camps.
Right. Yeah. And the people that do come back talk about, oh yeah, we were tortured there, and somehow that's not like a bigger story than it has been, right?
The Oklahoma thing is just like another example of how these things are really not benefiting the people who voted for them. Like, I started going to school in New York. I switched and went to school in Oklahoma, and there was already at that time such a big difference. Like, I specifically remember not learning about evolution because my teacher was like, "Hey, I don't believe in this. I'm a conscientious objector to teaching this, and we're gonna watch movies about volcanoes for a couple of weeks while the other classes go over it." So it was just my class, and just knowing, like, that institutions are going to know that people from certain states are going to have less education and be less, like, equipped to keep up in the university is just gonna give people who are already, like, in poorer or, like, more rural places less options to get out of that circumstance, and it's just even further continuing this thing we talk about when we talk about, like, redlining and stuff, where it's just, like, a system that's just creating the same problems and amplifying them over and over and over.
Yeah. Yep. It's such a weird combo of things that have enabled this. Take away opportunities from people in the United States, indoctrinate them into believing that we're the best country in the world and they're the best people for being in this country, and then telling them all their problems are based off of these immigrants that want to come to the United States for better opportunity, while at the same time pushing propaganda overseas that America is the best, it's the land of opportunity, so people work really hard to come here and have those opportunities, which just makes the people that are here that, those opportunities were taken away from, like, angry. Like, I don't know, it's like the weird circle, right, of just how that kind of works out. But yeah, I agree, just taking away opportunity from anyone in the United States and having them cheer for it, when we're taking down the Department of Education or whatnot. It's just, yeah, it's a crazy thing to see.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of this narrative that persists, this land of opportunity. It's like at every point there is less and less access to opportunity for less and less people, and yet the narrative remains.
The opportunities for the rich people. You can become a king or a prince or a lord or whatever in America if you have enough money. Like, that's essentially what it is. Land of opportunity for some.
I thought when you were speaking about that, like the Smithsonian, I thought, who's going to be in charge of the cultural review? And is it going to be like this 22-year-old terror czar who was like a gardener 6 months ago? Is he just going to find some loyalist, and all of a sudden it's going to be like, well, the Civil War wasn't really what you think it was. We just found new evidence. And what's going to change here?
That's a good
it's
question.
Scary.
Yeah. It's probably going to be Prager you guys. Like,
That's good. Yeah, they
Was it-
should. They have a history of it.
I mean, they were talking about, like, I keep seeing that they want to use, like, PragerU stuff in place of, like, PBS or whatnot. Like, they want to replace some of the educational videos. Like, the one that I saw the clip of was, like, Columbus talking about, like, yeah, slavery at the time was fine, Like, it was because it was, like, you can't judge the history based off of today's standards. And then you think about it and you're like, that was being debated back then. It wasn't like everyone in the civilized world was like, yeah, slavery is totally cool. That's totally fine. No, that was a huge issue back then too. But yeah, trying to whitewash that and basically make Columbus out to be the guy he was that I was taught about in school, just the intrepid adventurer. Crazy stuff. All right. Well, any plugs that we've got for today?
I have an anti-plug,
Yeah.
if that is the same, where in Eugene, Oregon, just the other day, what happened was they were doing kind of like embodying this whole ending crime and disorder on America's streets, and the city council is out on break. But the Eugene Police Department just debuted this week that they now have their own press. There's a guy in a bulletproof, fully tactical outfit, and it's labeled press, and he has his own camera, and he goes around with them. And his job is, of course, to record what's happening and to share it with all the local news stations. While it's not a violation of law, I did read that in 2022, the FBI had to settle a lawsuit with Associated Press that was kind of like this, because it's like law enforcement is posing as journalists, and police officers don't have any right to do that journalism. And whatever, there's like constitutional right to record police has been upheld. And so it's just like a really big issue where you're confusing police for press. This person is obviously not press. They work for the Eugene Police Department within one of the departments. And I think locally, that's a huge issue. It's like muddying the waters, and it should be addressed. And the Eugene Police Department should not be doing that. So anti-plug. Don't
it.
do that.
That's super weird. It's like you've got your own, I mean, essentially like mini ministry of propaganda for the police force.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it gives like a false sense of independence and it's very misleading. And
Yeah.
it's in a time where you're supposed to like trust. I don't know, the whole erosion of trust here with police officers is going out the window and they're becoming more militant and now they're pretending to be press, which
Yeah. Yeah. Not, yeah, that's concerning. It just made me think though, like as you were talking through that, like I think didn't the Germans actually have the Ministry of Propaganda?
yep. Like, yep. Hey, didn't the not yep?
Yep. Yeah. Ministry for Public Enlightenment and Propaganda. Okay. So they did have, the Ministry of Propaganda. I don't think we're going to see a Ministry of Propaganda in the US, but I do think that the Department of Homeland Security is just like dueling up for that role right now. Like they're both brown shirts and the Ministry of Propaganda, along with the Secretary of State, probably. But yeah, I guess I was just thinking that like, if you've got press embedded within your police forces, it inherently just becomes propaganda, right?
And they get to like choose which narrative to present and which one to silence. And let's just say that, this press member caught something on camera that the department didn't want. Like that's gonna not go around to the local news sources. So
Sure.
Doesn't this just like lead to like there's the police version video and then there's another video that people took and they're different. There's a discrepancy and they're like the police version's AI doctored and the police are like no, we're the police. This version's AI doctored and I'm just like, how is this helpful in any way?
Yeah. Is there any like, I wonder if there's a, like if they're like, oh no, we allow press, but we only allow certain press. Like if they can kind of like play that as a card, like, well, no, we allow press in, but it just happens to only be their ones because, yeah.
Yeah, and I know like Denver and Portland and New York have had issues in the past where press access to houseless sweeps has been totally restricted. So I guess I don't know, but I know they have been restricted on this thing, and this is somebody going around with them.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like anytime you're saying that the press can't come to something for some reason, then probably not good. If you're trying not to get documented, whatever you're doing, maybe you shouldn't be doing that thing. I don't know.
It does seem like the overarching narrative and the purpose of these things is consistent with egging on the conflict between people. Like they want to erupt things at every move. Like it's very clear each of these things are like, you know, for this purpose. And every time it doesn't happen, they're like another thing, another thing, another thing. Now we're dealing with all this
Yeah.
stuff. And people are like, let's expand, we need to go back to community. We need like, but the entire goal is to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing to get
Yeah.
to that point.
To get a violent reaction that they can then use to justify further state violence. This is really what it comes down to. They haven't really got it yet, so they had to use the big balls thing to take over DC. Like,
Yeah, I think all of it is like if I were in some niche society of ultra wealthy people where there's like 50 of us and we literally control like the means of the world, my playbook would be divide everybody and pit them against each other, and then they'll never worry about me. And I think that's exactly what's happening.
yeah, I agree. It's going pretty well so far too, for them, I guess. But all right. Well, on that note, on Thursday, we are going to have our book club episode drop. So that will be the first episode of Dawn of Everything. So that'll be on Thursday. We're covering chapters 1 and 2. Outside of that, I don't think I've got any major plugs for this week. So any last comments, Shai or Arthur? Anything you guys want to add in?
Book club, Dawn of Everything. It's been great. It's challenging history and what we're told. So I think it's really relevant. I love these books that aren't just like history, but they're also like political, and they break these myths and they talk about different possibilities. If you want some like radical possibilities of what could be and how history could be told in a different light, then join us for that. It's really a fascinating read.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, just from the first episode, something that I learned that I never knew was that there were quite a few indigenous philosophers in the United States before anyone from Europe ever came over here. All I ever learned about in school was Greek philosophers and Roman philosophers, not Native American philosophers. So yeah, super interesting. Very excited to keep with the book.
My last thought is I recently took a class. It's like a biological anthropology class about just like the evolution of humans and like our mental health and society, etc. And my professor, he's like super smart, wrote a book, and he kind of gave us as his closing thoughts his like top three easy to do things to just like net improve your life with low effort. And the first one, which we have probably all heard before, was literally let your bare foot touch the grass. And although I've heard that many times, I don't do it very often. And I have been trying to do it lately. And I just literally, I suggest it. It's good for your microbiome. It's good for your brain. Let the toe touch the grass.
I'll try it in my Oculus later today.
Perfect.
Yeah. 'Cause real grass has like dirt under it, right? And I don't like dirt. That's...
Ew, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, tune in Thursday for Dawn of Everything. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening and hanging out with us.
If you enjoy the show, help us spread the word. Leave a rating, a review, and share it with your friends, family, or anyone you think would get something out of these conversations.
Your ratings, reviews, and shares help this show grow, and the more people listening, the harder it is for propaganda to win.
So until next time,
Stay aware, stay safe, and remember,
Propaganda loves you.